The galaxy had always laughed at Earth. To the core empires, humanity was a novelty, fragile creatures from a blue marble at the edge of a forgotten arm. They mocked our primitive wars, our fractured nations, our chaotic politics. The great races, with their thousand-year dynasties and fleets carved from starlight, believed we would remain harmless forever. They were wrong. It didn't happen overnight. No single atrocity flipped the switch. The galaxy bled us slowly, taxes demanded by councils we never voted for, patrols in our skies that enforced laws not our own, and the taking of our brightest children, invited to serve in alien academies but never to return. Humanity endured it all with strained smiles, clinging to diplomacy, hoping reason might soften arrogance. But reason was a language the core never spoke. The spark came in silence, carried across the stars in whispers that reached every colony and every earthbound home. A freighter returning from the Triax system was seized by Zorathi raiders, pirates tolerated by the core, their attacks dismissed as unfortunate border disputes. On board were refugees from Mars, families escaping debt and drought. None survived. The raiders broadcast the execution of the passengers to prove a point: humans were prey, not people. The galaxy expected us to kneel, as always. Instead, something ancient stirred. On Earth, the streets filled with grief first, then fury. The holofeeds showed the burning wreck, children's faces frozen in screams before static consumed the image. In London, millions gathered in silence, black banners covering the skyline. In Lagos, protesters overturned the embassy of the council, chanting one word in a rhythm that shook the city: enough. The word spread like a plague. Across lunar cities, asteroid belts, ocean habitats beneath Europa's ice, the same whisper echoed through calm channels and dark nets: enough. Even in the colonies far beyond Sol, where human miners labored under alien whips, the word burned like a secret fire. Prisoners carved it into steel walls. Soldiers muttered it beneath their breath in the barracks. Traitors passed it coded in their manifests. For centuries, we had begged for recognition, fought for seats in councils where our voices were drowned out, offered our inventions, our art, our labor. We had been patient. Too patient. Now patience was dead. It began not with armies, but with silence. The core expected rage. They expected riots, strikes, pleas. Instead, humanity went still. Our government stopped sending envoys. Our colonies ceased petitions. Merchant fleets returned home without explanation. Embassies closed their doors. To the outside eye, it looked like surrender, like a primitive race finally accepting its place in the galactic order. But silence is not surrender. Silence is the breath drawn before the scream. Deep beneath Luna's surface, in caverns carved during the resource wars of the 22nd century, leaders met in shadows. They were not presidents or kings, not generals of armies the galaxy mocked as outdated. They were the quiet ones, the engineers, the strategists, the ones who remembered every humiliation. Files of atrocities lined the chamber walls, each one a record of the galaxy's cruelty: forced labor camps on Rigel's moons, experiments on abducted children, massacres excused as disciplinary actions. Humanity had catalogued every wound. Now they began to sharpen them into weapons. Captain Elias Moreau had been a child when Earth signed the Concord, binding us to the Core's authority. He remembered the parades, the speeches about joining the stars. He also remembered the first time he saw a human diplomat humiliated before an alien tribunal, forced to bow lower than the rest, to speak last and be ignored. Now, decades later, Moreau stood in the Luna chamber with his scarred hands clenched. He was not alone. Soldiers, pilots, hackers, inventors, each carried the same fire in their eyes. They were done asking permission to exist. "The galaxy thinks we are soft," Moreau said, his voice steady, echoing against the cavern walls. "They think we will endure every insult, every theft, every death. They mistake mercy for weakness. But we have one gift they have forgotten. The chamber waited. We endure until we don't. And when we break, we burn everything. No one argued. The preparations began in silence, but the silence soon grew teeth. Factories on Earth that once built colony ships shifted to darker projects, their schedules scrubbed from public records. The asteroid shipyards went dark, their beacons disabled. The Jovian moons closed their ports, citing quarantine protocols. To the core, it seemed like disarray, primitive chaos, humans losing control of their fractured colonies. But beneath the surface, unity formed where none had existed before. Nations set aside grudges. Rival corporations shared codes. Old enemies clasped hands, because the galaxy had reminded us what we were, not Americans, or Russians, or Africans, or Chinese. Not Martians or Terrans or Belters. We were human. And we had decided enough. The first strike came quietly. An orbital fortress above Tau Ceti, long used by the core to tax and humiliate passing human freighters, went dark. When inspection ships arrived, they found it gutted from within, its alien garrison slaughtered without a shot fired in space. Human workers had risen in unison, cutting power, sealing hatches, and leaving a message scrawled in blood across the command deck: "We are not your prey." The council dismissed it as an isolated rebellion. Then it happened again. And again. Within weeks, 3 fortresses, 2 patrol fleets, and a core embassy were erased. No declaration. No demands. Just silence, then fire. The galaxy began to tremble. In the chambers of the core, voices of arrogance faltered. They are disorganized, one alien minister argued. They are primitives, dangerous only to themselves, another scoffed. But the records told another story. Each attack was precise, coordinated. Each strike erased years of core dominance in hours. The humans were not lashing out blindly. They were moving like predators who had studied their prey for too long. And behind it all was the whisper that spread through every human world, every colony, every starship crew. Enough. Chapter 1 ends here, the silence before the firestorm, the gathering of a storm the galaxy refused to believe in. The humans had stopped being nice. And soon, the galaxy would burn. The first true warship rose from the shadows of Titan's shipyards. It was not sleek like the core's vessels, nor gilded with ceremonial alloys. Its hull was raw iron, blackened and scarred, forged from the bones of 1,000 abandoned colonies. It was not built to impress. It was built to end wars. The core called it a monstrosity when they first saw its outline in their long-range scans. They were right. It was monstrous, because it was human. The Aegis Eternal was not alone. Across Sol's scattered moons and hollowed asteroids, fleets stirred. Carriers hidden beneath Europa's oceans breached the surface, their decks crawling with drones. Battlecruisers dormant for decades blinked awake as engineers reconnected ancient cores. Civilian freighters shed their false skin to reveal plasma cannons welded beneath cargo panels. The galaxy had mistaken human silence for surrender. Now they saw it for what it was: preparation. The first strike against the core fleet was not in open battle, it was in their minds. Hackers from Earth, Belter cryptographers, and Martian AI designers unleashed something new, a digital plague, seeded into the core's network years earlier under the guise of trade software. It bloomed all at once, consuming comm relays and fleet databases. Admirals woke to find their ships deaf and blind. Orders lagged, scrambled, or reversed. Whole squadrons drifted into ambushes because their navigation AI whispered false coordinates. By the time the core realized what was happening, the sky was already burning. At Vega's border station, the alien garrison stared in disbelief as the horizon filled with shadows. Human ships came in silence, no warnings, no demands. The first salvo ripped through the station's defense grid in under a minute. Plasma fire rolled across the outpost's surface, melting towers like wax. Fighters swarmed like hornets, not in neat core formations but in chaotic waves, every pilot fighting with instinct honed in 1,000 different battlefields of Earth's history. The Corps commanders expected hesitation, bargaining, restraint. They had grown used to human pleas for mercy. But the humans did not speak. They did not ask. They struck, and moved on. Across the galaxy, panic spread. The council convened in their grand chamber, the air thick with disbelief. Holograms of burning fleets flickered above them, core dreadnoughts gutted, supply lines severed, colonies seized in hours. The humans fought like no race had ever fought, not for conquest, not for expansion, but for annihilation. One minister hissed, "They are primitives. This cannot last." Another croaked, "Then why does every battle end in their favor?" The chamber fell silent when the recordings played, a single human fleet tearing through 3 times its number, their ships scarred but still advancing, never retreating, never breaking. And then the words appeared, hacked across every core broadcast, every console, every datapad in 100 systems. Enough. For Captain Elias Moreau, the firestorm was not a surprise. He had stood in silence too long to expect mercy. Now he stood on the bridge of the Aegis Eternal, watching another core fleet scatter before his guns. "Status," he demanded. 2 frigates disabled, 1 cruiser retreating. "The dreadnought's engines are crippled," his tactical officer replied. "Finish it." The Aegis Eternal roared. Its spinal cannon unleashed a beam that carved through the core dreadnought's heart. In the silence of space, the ship split in 2, molten metal spilling into the void like blood. The crew did not cheer. There was no triumph here. Only grim resolve. Moreau knew what his people had decided: no more begging, no more bending knees. They would burn every chain until none remained. The galaxy soon learned that humanity's cruelty was not in their weapons, it was in their memory. Every atrocity catalogued in Luna's hidden chambers became a target list. The Corps had enslaved human miners on Dravari 4. The mines went dark in a single night, the overseers found strung from their towers. The Corps had dissected human children on Calath Prime. The laboratories exploded in synchronized fire, leaving only ash. The Corps had taxed colonies into starvation on Loras Station. The tax ships were found drifting, their crews vanished without a trace. The message was clear: humanity had not forgotten. And they forgave nothing. But victory was not without cost. On the fringes of Orion's Spur, a human fleet clashed with Corps reinforcements. Outnumbered 3-1, the battle raged for hours. Human ships fought until their hulls were torn open, until their reactors bled fire. Pilots rammed their crippled fighters into enemy carriers rather than retreat. When it was over, the Corps fleet was gone, obliterated, but so were half the human ships. The survivors drifted among wreckage, silent beacons flashing their final word: enough. The galaxy saw this and shivered. For what kind of species chooses death so willingly, if only to wound their enemy? The Corps tried to answer with terror. They bombarded colonies, unleashed viral weapons, set entire atmospheres aflame. Worlds burned, cities fell, billions cried out. And still the humans advanced, not slower but faster, each cruelty fueling their resolve. In Lagos, refugees from destroyed colonies gathered, chanting through tears. In New Shanghai, soldiers kissed their families goodbye, knowing they would not return but going anyway. On Mars, miners turned their drills into railguns, hurling tungsten rods into enemy ships with the fury of a starving people. Every death became a spark. Every atrocity became a rallying cry. And the galaxy realized too late: when humans say enough, it is not a request. It is a sentence. In the council chambers, the ministers finally dropped their arrogance. "We must negotiate," one whispered. "With who?" another asked bitterly. "Their fleets will not answer our calls." Their leaders do not sit at our tables. Their diplomats have vanished. They must want something. But they were wrong. Humanity did not want land, or tribute, or recognition. Humanity wanted only one thing, justice. And justice, to them, meant fire. The galaxy burned. Worlds that had once laughed at humans now cowered in silence, their skies filled with black iron fleets. Stations that once enslaved human children were reduced to dust. Entire sectors flickered out as the firestorm swept across the stars. And yet, in the heart of the storm, Captain Elias Moreau stood grim and unyielding. He knew this was only the beginning. Because humanity had spoken their word. And until the galaxy understood it, there would be no peace. The war had lasted only a year. For the core, it felt like centuries of nightmares condensed into months of fire. Their fleets, once symbols of eternal dominance, now lay scattered across dead systems. Their citadels drifted as lifeless husks. The vast lattice of empires that had stood unchallenged for millennia trembled as though struck by an earthquake. The galaxy had seen wars before, civil uprisings, border skirmishes, even rebellions that spanned dozens of worlds. But nothing like this. Nothing like the humans. They did not fight as conquerors, nor as rebels. They fought like survivors who had been pushed too far. Every battle was not for glory, not even for victory. It was punishment. And punishment spread like wildfire. On the ruined world of Calith Prime, alien scientists once dissected human children. Now its laboratories were craters, glassed by human bombardment. Survivors wandered in shock, staring at skies blackened by the smoke of their own arrogance. On Dravari 4, once a mining colony of chained humans, the whips of the overseers lay in the dust. The human prisoners did not cheer, they simply took up the rifles of the fallen and joined the fleets. On Vega's stations, the walls still bore the painted word left behind after the massacres: enough. It was not just a war. It was a reckoning. In the heart of the core, panic roared like a second war. Worlds that had never seen fire now heard the distant thunder of human fleets. The ministers of the council locked themselves in their golden chamber, their faces pale with fear. Their arrogance, once a weapon sharper than fleets, had dissolved into frantic whispers. They will reach us within weeks. We must open negotiations. They will not listen. They want only destruction. But even in their terror, they failed to understand. Humanity had not come for territory or tribute. They had come for a truth carved in fire. You cannot break a people forever. Push them too long, and one day, they push back. Captain Elias Moreau stood at the prow of the Aegis Eternal, watching the starfields ahead. Beyond them lay the core's homeworlds, the throne of their so-called eternal empire. His ship was scarred, patched with the steel of a dozen conquered stations. His crew was weary, their faces lined by sleepless nights and endless battles. Yet in their eyes burned the same fire that had carried them from Sol, the fire of a people who had decided their own worth. "Signal the fleet," Moreau said quietly. The officer nodded. "Message?" Moreau's gaze hardened. "One word." The transmission burned across the void, carried by every human ship, every comm buoy, every hacked relay in the core's network. Enough. The word echoed across thousands of worlds. And for the first time, the galaxy understood it. The core prepared their last defense, a grand armada assembled from every remaining ship, their pride and desperation forged into one final stand. 1,000 vessels stretched across the black, their banners glowing with the arrogance of empires too old to remember fear. But fear found them anyway. The humans came not in equal numbers, but fewer. Scarred ships, jury-rigged weapons, fleets stitched together from colonies that once could not agree on anything. But they came with a unity the galaxy had never seen. The battle began like thunder. Core ships unleashed storms of plasma, their cannons filling the void with light. Human ships plunged into it headlong, tearing through barrages with suicidal precision. Fighters danced like sparks, colliding in bursts of fire. Carriers bled drones until the sky seemed a living swarm. The Aegis Eternal drove into the heart of the storm, its cannons roaring, tearing dreadnoughts apart piece by piece. Moreau stood unshaken as alarms screamed around him. This was not a battle for survival. It was a verdict. Hours stretched like eternity. Both fleets burned. Wreckage littered the void. But where core ships hesitated, humans pressed forward. Where core captains pleaded for orders, humans acted with instinct. And where the core fought for pride, the humans fought for something far greater, the right to never kneel again. When the smoke cleared, the core armada was broken. Half their fleet burned, the rest fled. Humanity's losses were immense, but they advanced still, engines blazing toward the core's heart. The galaxy watched in silence. The invincible had fallen. The untouchable were bleeding. The humans were coming. The Council's homeworld had never known war. Its skies were polished, its seas pristine, its towers unscarred by conflict. The ministers had believed their power eternal, sheltered by fleets and fear. Now human warships filled their orbit. No declaration came. No envoy. No plea. Only fire. The bombardment was swift, merciless, absolute. Towers crumbled, seas boiled, the sky turned black. The minister's palace cracked and fell, their golden chamber crushed beneath the weight of their own arrogance. And when it was over, the homeworld of the core was ash. The galaxy trembled. Worlds that had once mocked humanity now sent envoys, not to demand, but to beg. Colonies whispered of surrender before battles even began. Rival empires, long enemies of the core, watched in terror, wondering if humanity's fire would turn toward them next. But the fire did not spread aimlessly. Humanity did not seek conquest. When the last core world fell silent, the fleets ceased their advance. In the stillness that followed, humanity broadcast one final message to the stars. Not a threat. Not even a promise. Just truth. We asked for respect. You gave us chains. We asked for peace. You gave us graves. Now you will remember this, humanity kneels to no one. Push us again, and the galaxy will burn. Captain Elias Moreau stood on the bridge, watching the ashes of an empire drift into the void. His crew was silent, their faces unreadable. There was no cheer, no triumph. Only the heavy weight of justice delivered too late. Was it enough? His first officer asked softly. Moreau's gaze lingered on the dying world below. No, he said at last. But it will be remembered. The galaxy had thought humans fragile. They had thought mercy meant weakness, patience meant submission, kindness meant cowardice. Now they knew the truth. Humans had stopped being nice. And the galaxy would never forget how it burned.